I bid you good morning, good evening, good night, wherever you may be watching this transmission. And prayers go out for the people living down under in Australia being evicted. And don't forget to check out the channel here, guys. Australian civil unrest and Australian water goes corporate while country burns. Check out some of the videos I threw up there for you guys the last couple of days. It's been last day and a half, actually. It's been getting intense down under. But I want to cover the housing down there and what's been going on. Guys, don't forget to join the channel here and support with a little pledge a month, small pledge a month if you can. And don't forget to check out our little store we got here for the channel to support us here. Okay, guys, 1 in 5 households are facing mortgage stress despite lower rates. So remember, they've done 3 rate cuts recently, and unfortunately, it hasn't helped stimulate. It has somewhat helped stimulate the housing market a bit, but it's not helping the working poor middle class because a lot of them are house broke or a lot of them bought. You guys should see, I mean, if you're just joining into the channel, what you could buy for $200,000 in parts of America in comparison to what it would cost in Australia, the same house. You guys would be flabbergasted of the huge offset in pricing is just absolutely phenomenal. And a lot of people are like, well, minimum wage in Australia is $19. I'd rather make $6.75 US an hour, but live in South Carolina or Florida and at least be happy and budget my money, invest, and make better decisions than become housebroke in Australia. I'd rather do that. I'm sorry, guys. That's just me. About 1 in 5 mortgage borrowers, or about 2 million households, are struggling to make repayments. Now, we saw this with the food banks, where the food banks were giving food bank vouchers to homeowners in Australia to get food from the food bank so they wouldn't have to worry about missing a mortgage payment. That's how bad it is in Australia. Despite record low interest rates, according to analysis by Finder Comparison website, pressure is expected to grow over the coming weeks as the expense of Christmas and the New Year's demands a disposable income, particularly for families, the analysis shows. Borrowers are being urged to shop around for lower rates as the difference between the lowest and highest owner-occupied principal and interest rates blows out about 90%. The number of struggling households has increased since May, the month before the Reserve Bank of Australia began the first of its 3 cash rate cuts from 1.5% to 0.75%. I wonder what an ounce of gold, because I've been following gold this morning. I did a gold video like 25 minutes ago. I wonder what an ounce of gold in Australian dollars is going for right now. Holy smokes. High leverage. Lenders have been competing for new business by offering new low rates and increasing incentives. So now you guys remember what's been happening there with banking confidence in Australia is probably less than 10%. Nobody trusts their banks after all the shenanigans all the banks have been pulling down there. All the big banks have been pulling all kinds of shenanigans down there, and the amount of millions, if not hundreds of millions of their own infractions they've broken, or regulated infractions put on by, let's say, the federal governments or stuff. They've been breaking rules left, right, and center to hit numbers, to get those quotes, to get those bonuses, to get the money. Right here, the money. You don't take it with you when you go, but they just want to just show, ranging from cash payments from conveyancing to discounts for switching. So they're like, oh, it's like, when you get one of those credit cards in the mail, hey, switch to us and do a consolidation and pay off all your credit cards and start this low interest payment. And then people go back and start using the other credit cards they paid off because they needed to live. Well, that's what people are doing. They're switching around to try and save their monthly payments. You shouldn't be buying a house for $800,000 if you're only making $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year. You shouldn't be buying a house for that much. A house should realistically be, with the cost of crap is today, should be around $300,000 to $380,000, maybe $450,000 max for a decent 3-4 bedroom home. Okay? Household debt remains high, and there are a lot of borrowers sitting on large mortgages. And then they can't unload these mortgages or they can't unload these homes because they're already at a loss. Some of them have lost value. There's parts of Sydney where it's down 14% from its 2017 peak. Said Brendan Coates, Household Finance Program Director of Graham Institute. Leverage is typically the highest in Victoria and New South Wales, typically in Melbourne and Sydney has fallen in the Western Australian and Northern Territory, where house prices have dropped. Lenders tend to penalize those who stay in with long-term in favor of new borrowers who help build their loan book, Mr. Coates says. Wages and inflation are not growing very strong, which means incomes are not rising to meet rising costs, and debt is not deflating away. Yeah, that's the key point of this right here. Debt is not deflating away. So we have a huge problem. They probably want to deflate the currency as much as possible so you could pay it back, but the problem is wages aren't catching up. Capitalism, I said, guys, is great. It works when wages can keep up with inflation. When wages don't keep up with inflation, you see this delta, this gap of delta, where wages haven't moved in 20, 30 years realistically because the cost of crap keeps going up and people don't make more. Disposable income. The nation's household financial liabilities have reached about 2.5 trillion, but are growing slowly, increasing about 4% a year, according to analysis by National Australian Bank. This is not GDP, guys. This is 4% a year of financial liabilities of what they have leveraged, of what they're borrowing, right? This is huge. Oh, you're young. You could pay it back. What? You're not going to get sick? What? You're not going to have disruptions in your life? That's going to, yeah. So, yeah. Average weekly housing costs for property owners with a mortgage increased to $484 a week last year compared to $469 in 2015 and 2016, according to the government statistics. Why don't we go back to like 2006 and 7 and 5 and 4, where payments were like $210, $275 a week. About 1 in 5 households spend more than 30% of their disposable income. Okay, this is extremely conservative to say this. About 1 in 5 households spend more than 30% of their disposable income on household costs, which generally considers the maximum amount to avoid financial stress. That is extremely conservative because what I've been looking at numbers and all the analytics that's been going on in Australia from what we are allowed to gather. No, I think it's 3 in 5 households spend more than 40% of the disposable income. That's what I think. About 5% spend more than 50%. That's huge. Right there. That's huge. Household gearing is a record high of 202% annual income compared to 120% in 2000 and 178% in 2010, according to the NAB analysis. Constant monitoring. Kate Brown, personal finance expert and Finder, said many borrowers have failed to use recent rate cuts to find cheaper loan and reduce monthly payments. But you still have to pay for refinancing. You have to pay to break a mortgage. You still may have to pay for a lot of things. You know, you have to pay for mortgage documents. You have to pay for an appraisal. You have to pay for an assessment on the house. Like, not an assessment, but an inspection. You have to pay for all that stuff. Mortgages need constant monitoring, said Mr. Brown, who added it might also be worth haggling with an existing lender for a lower rate. Mr. Coates added, borrowers are not shopping around anywhere near as much as they should be. They should not be paying loyalty tax to their lender. Well, why don't banks in Australia bring down the actual lending rate from what they are borrowing the money? Because I know Australia is borrowing the money almost next to nothing. The Australian banks, the Reserve Bank of Australia, is lending out the money next to nothing to the banks, but the banks are spiking the interest rates on the consumers. In the States, it's a little bit different. When the Feds lower rates, the banks go ahead and lower rates across the board. According to the Fed, it's like prime plus 0.3 or prime plus 0.2 for their borrowers, right? For example, owner-occupier principal and interest (P&I) variable rates range from 2.74% to 5.14%, a difference of about 90%. 5-year owner-occupied P&I fixed rates range from 2.88% to 5.04%, a difference of about 70%. New loans have recently picked up, but weak incomes are already high. Levels of debt could constrain additional borrowing, according to NAB analysis. Mr. Coates believes that the biggest respite for household debt will be further rate cuts. The RBA can still cut from here, and it will make a difference, he said. The question is whether banks will pass on their cuts. That's exactly what I was just asking earlier. Are banks going to pass on? They're going to keep lowering rates. They're probably going to go into negative territory, but the average consumer is still going to pay 3% at the bank, while the banks are borrowing at negative territory. And then bank accounts will go into negative territory following suit with what the banks are borrowing at. So you got to be very careful with this stuff, guys. You got to be really careful. If you are in this housing conundrum right now, I feel very sorry for you down under, especially with all the fires and all the wildfires. Been covering it on the channel, guys. I feel my heart goes out to everyone down in Australia. I even put a thing out there for us to pray for Australia. For it's going through a really tough time right now, and it's got a few. Look, even Scott Morrison commented on it here. So we have down there in the community, I just kind of wish the media, I kind of wish governance, I kind of wish the establishment was on our side just one time. Just be on our side. Know what we are all going through. Guys, don't forget to join the channel and support for $1.99 a month. Be part of the... Help it out, guys. Support it. It's getting expensive to operate. Everything's getting expensive to run right now. And I wish it wasn't the case. Let me know. Comment below. Lots of love. Thanks for watching, guys. And let me know in the comments below.